So I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. So I'm withdrawing all drivers and extensions for Rapidus for the Ultimate 1MB after the recent contretemps regarding Rapidus. This has been going on for some years now, and I've had enough. So let's explain the reasoning behind this and give you some background. So of course I was gifted by Atari back in 2015 or 2016, or whenever this device was released. Supposedly serial number 001 Rapidus, which was very kind of him indeed. I wouldn't go out of my way to buy an accelerator for the Atari, but that's what he decided to do, to thank me for various things I had done, and I was very grateful indeed, and of course received it. And well, now that I'd received it, I thought I would use it, and I put it in initially in a 1200 XL. The 1200 XL was full of other upgrades, of course. Probably not the best place to put it if you think about bus capacitance problems and that kind of thing. And it kind of worked, but there was a strange issue where you would boot to Sparta-DOS X from the Ultimate 1MB, and at the DOS prompt it would initially work fine, but if you press system reset, you would expect the reset process to happen, and then you'd be back at the Sparta-DOS X prompt as before, but it would cold boot very oddly, and sometimes send you into places that you didn't expect to be, such as dropping into internal basic and that kind of thing, or just doing a cold start, and the margin, which is set to 1 I think on the high speed 65816 operating system, would change, and that would kind of indicate that it had switched modes. It was very random kind of behaviour. So I took it out of that machine and I put it into 130XE, which also had Ultimate 1MB. Rapidus's build is working with Ultimate 1MB. There's even an option in the menu which enables Ultimate 1MB cooperation, so no question about that. And when I complained about the 1200 XL behaviour, Conrad, who wrote the firmware for the Rapidus, I should have realised right there and then, actually, because prior to this there was a problem that was supposed to be caused by the Ultimate 1MB PBI BIOS, which wasn't. It was a Rapidus problem, as we found out after the fact, but I didn't think anything of that. But he said, oh, Rapidus is it's for XE computers, not for XL computers, XE computers. It's in the name. This is hilarious. Speaking of salient points, this was way back at the beginning, so I must have just put the thing into the 1200 XL at this point. Speaking of salient points and how stuff is advertised, was the Rapidus also advertised at 1200 XL compatible? You've put it in the wrong machine. Ha ha ha. That's why it doesn't work. Is it not supposed to work with XLs? But never mind, we put it in XE and it did exactly the same thing with the Ultimate 1MB installed. And so there was the usual, what kind of power supply are you using? I can't duplicate this issue. They must have done something wrong. Did he install it correctly? There's something wrong. Now Conrad writes really great software, and he's a real veteran when it comes to firmware, hard disk drivers and that kind of thing. I hate to have to say it, but his software is just brilliant. Highly educated man as well. I think he studied Latin, so I'm sure he knows what ad hominem insult means. But anyway, here we have the beginning of it, and this just sets the tone for the whole thing. I say I installed Rapidus temporarily in a stock PAL 130XE with no other upgrades whatsoever some weeks ago, and it appeared to work without problems until a side 2 cart was attached, at which point the machine began to reboot on system reset. So the only recommendation I can truthfully offer based on personal experience, and I'm not a noob, is a bone stock 130XE with nothing else attached. So let's see what the tone for the whole conversation is set here. I guess I probably do not count. Ha 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 ha. But here, a 320K 65XE with IDE attached, working very well. So in other words, it works for me, so fuck you. So I put it in a stock XE, so no upgrades of any kind, But of course, since Rapidus doesn't have Spartados X built into it, to test Spartados X, I plugged in a Side 2 cartridge in the back of this stock machine. It was a 130XE, I think it was. And that seemed to work until I pressed System Reset and it jumped into internal basic. Or cold booted, depending on how it felt at the time. So yeah, I reported all these problems. And but nevertheless, despite all these little niggles, people actually wanted them installed in their machines, and I would be very upfront about, you know, the potential problems that could occur when Ultimate 1 Megabyte and Rapidus are installed together. But from the prior experiments, it seemed that you could experience issues with devices other than Ultimate 1 Megabyte, but never mind. And this was a considered purchase as well, bear in mind. I think Rapidus cost around £160 at the time, so it's a fairly considered purchase. And but they would still go, oh no, I want to play with it and see, you know, I want a powerful accelerated machine. So I would dutifully install these Rapidus boards with Ultimate 1 Megabytes. They always came as a pair, they always wanted both together. And I've made quite a few videos. I think I did about half a dozen machines, all told, which had Rapidus and Ultimate 1 Megabyte in them together for other people. And documented them. Quite a lot of them were videoed. And I'm fairly sure that these videos spurred people on to actually buy the device. But the ongoing discussion about the problems, the attitude is very much, well, I can't duplicate this problem, so it must just be you. It must just be you. You're doing something wrong because this can't possibly be happening. What kind of power supply are you using? What kind of wallpaper do you have? What's the level of humidity in your room? What's the quality of your mains electricity like? Which way does the house face? What phase of the moon is it currently? That kind of thing. I exaggerate, of course, but everything had to be was it installed properly? You just have to put the Rapidus into the socket, the CPU socket, put the CPU into the Rapidus socket, and wire up 3 wires. But you didn't install it properly. You've done something wrong. It must be you. This is despite the fact that it didn't only happen on my computers, several of them. It would happen on everybody else's computer as well. Every client who sent a machine in. There was one exception actually. There was an NTSC 800XL, which had both devices in, and it seemed not to exhibit this problem. Just by some random quirk, but the gods had smiled down on that particular day and said that this machine is chosen, it's special, and we are going to allow this machine to work properly with Ultimate 1 Megabyte and Rapidus at the same time. Blessed is this machine. And it was anointed, and it was blessed, and it did work. Although I think a few months later the owner said that there was some funny business going on. But never mind, it didn't do it while it was here. So another argument was that you don't really want this problem to be fixed, John, said Conrad. You don't want it to be fixed because if you did, you'd send your machine to Atari where he could look at it and find out what's wrong and fix the problem. Why not? Perhaps because you are the only one who apparently is experiencing the problems. Wrong! Every machine that came through the house in one form or another eventually displayed the same problem. In my eyes, you have lost the credibility once you refuse to send any of your computers with Rapidus to anyone else for verification. Do you think that because I'm frightened that they won't be able to reproduce the problem when it's on the desk? Is that it? Is that probably why I don't send them in, isn't it? Because I just made it up, just to smear the product. Oh yes. For me, this simply means that you do not want the problem to be fixed. No. All it took was somebody like Atari to spend 20 minutes to actually look at the problem, which he eventually did. And it's now confirmed that the problem exists. And it's not caused by software. It appears to be caused by Rapidus. Well, by this point, a lot of the machines were they weren't mine. And there was a discussion, I think, in 2017 where Atari said, look, send the machine here and I'll have a look at it. And we can find out once and for all just what this problem is. And I said, yeah, well, I'll speak to the owner because it's not my machine. And the owner said, fuck that, I'm not sending the computer over to Poland. If it kind of works, just send it back and I'll deal with it. More recently there was a machine actually where I put both upgrades in. The owner got the machine back. It did all the things that I was talking about, this weird reset behaviour, and it would also, where the Ultimate 1 Megabyte queries the VBXE if it's present in the machine and reports the version number, the core version number and something. You would get all sorts of crap reported there. So something was intervening there, and it was even screwing up that you couldn't even read the AVR chip or the flash on the VBXE reliably when you had this thing in. And the owner of this particular machine found it to be such a handful that he sent another machine and said, look, put the Rapidus in this machine without the Ultimate 1 Megabyte in it, will you? And I'll just keep the two completely apart. And that's what I did. So he's now got one machine with Rapidus in it, another machine with Ultimate 1 Megabyte, and never the twain shall meet. And he seems to be reasonably happy with that now. But this behaviour was so prolific, so easy to reproduce, that the argument used that you don't want this to be fixed because you won't send your machine to Lotharic didn't make any sense at all, because all Lotharic had to do right from day one was pick a couple of machines from the collection in his office, put both upgrades in it and actually use it. Not just turn it on, say, oh, that works fine. No, use it for a while, leave it running for 20 minutes and then do the same things again. And there's a 99% chance that you'd experience exactly the same behaviour I'd seen. Other possible explanation, what sort of power supply? Apparently, if you overvolt the power supply, it can ameliorate the problem. How many customers have got 5.5 volt power supplies, for Christ's sake? And then Lotharic came out, oh, this was about 2017, oh, there is a problem, Mexico CPU, if it's a Mexico CPU you can get weird glitches. So don't use a Mexico CPU, use an NCR CPU. The CPUs are overheating. I've witnessed the CPUs overheating on the desk. On June the 8th, 2017, I've noticed, says Lotharic, that some CPUs, like FJC said, are overheating. Yes, that overheating business that was supposed to be all in my head. For at least 3 to 4 months after FJC's hammering, I test all CPUs Atari I have around me, and that led me to the conclusion that the Mexico CPU works at first boot. After a few minutes of work and manual restart, Rapidus core loading bar stops. That isn't even the problem that I was wanting him to look into. NCR, best ones, no problems. I don't want to think at this point that he'd actually left the machine running long enough to trigger the reset issue, or perhaps he simply didn't understand what I was trying to describe. So it took another 3 years after this post for the original problem that I was concentrating on to be duplicated on his desk. For whatever reason, I don't know, but it's not my fault. And yet Conrad's still, oh, well, this is an alleged problem, it doesn't really exist, John, it's all in John's head. Then you got Lotharic actually on the forum, openly stating that there's an issue. The CPU overheats. So he published some fixes, pull-ups, pull-downs, pull fucking sideways, pull this way and fucking other. Caps, resistors, little mods and stability fixes. None of it did any fucking good, as far as I could see. Maybe some of it worked for him, but I don't know. Didn't work for me. I even put the board in a 1088 XEL, a brand new re-imaged Atari 8-bit motherboard, and it still did exactly the same thing. That board has a ground plane, a power plane, completely redesigned layout using brand new components, and it still did the same thing. And that's when I finally gave up on it. This was a year ago or more. I took the Rapidus out of that machine and I put it in the drawer, and it's been in the drawer ever since. 4 years later, we have somebody on the forum, on the Atari Age forum, who has put both upgrades in his computer, and when he presses system reset, it very often goes into a basic ROM that he didn't even select in the Ultimate 1 Megabyte configuration menu. God alone knows how this is happening, but it ain't a software problem. So Conrad says, well, you're using a quite old version of the Ultimate 1 Megabyte firmware, you might want to update. That's a good idea. If you're on version 1.02 of FJC's Ultimate 1 MB firmware, yes, update it. Update it, because the experience that you get will be so much better with version 3.10. I guarantee it. Of course the old versions had bugs. Everybody's software has bugs, they get fixed, and the newer versions are better. But if you think that the owner updating his firmware is going to fix the Rapidus problem, somehow the code that selects the basic ROM has changed and corrected itself such that this problem will no longer exist, then you're in for a tremendous disappointment. It just happens regardless. It happens with the stock Ultimate 1 MB firmware, Candle's BIOS. But oh my god, the triggering. Oh god, the triggering. Is this on a system reset? And I could see it, I could see the tension building. I could see it building now. Now, of course, I don't care anymore. Now, earlier this year, I received word that Lotharic had finally managed to duplicate the problem that I was experiencing on his own desk. And yes, it's Rapidus. It's Rapidus that's causing the problem. Well, I could have gloated. I could have gloated. I could have felt happy to be vindicated, but no. All I felt was just regret. Regret that I'd spent all that time learning 65C 816 assembly language to write these drivers, to support the device with extensions in Ultimate 1 MB, to promote the thing, to make videos showing how to install it, and spending all that time with emails and messages and forum posts describing what I'd done with pull-up resistors on the address bus or data bus, or pull-down resistors, or modifications, or moving this around and trying this and trying that. Hour after hour after hour after hour. And all I get is, oh, it's all in your head. You need to put a thermometer on the you can't just say that the CPU's overheating just by putting your finger on it. You need to measure the temperature. It's all in your mind. And this guy accuses me of being defensive and sounding worried. I don't give a shit anymore. I don't care. If you find a bug in the BIOS, let me know about it and I'll fix it. But for to sit there for 4 or 5 fucking years, there's no problem, it's all in your mind. It's his fault that it doesn't get fixed. He doesn't really want the problem to be fixed. Unless you send Lotharic your machine, you've got no right to complain about this. You can't even be believed your credibility is down the toilet. When in fact, there was never any need to send the machine in. There was never any point in sending the machine in, because all he had to do was install the stuff in a machine, put it on the desk, use it, and study the behaviour for more than 20 minutes. Now, if you really want to know why this problem didn't get fixed after 4 years, look not to my desk, not even to Lotharic's desk, and certainly not to Conrad's desk, who, by the way, feels able to proclaim that a problem doesn't exist or is in the mind of others, even when he professes not to even own an Ultimate 1 MB. He hasn't even got an Ultimate 1 MB in the goddamn machine, but he's confident that the problem doesn't exist. No, if you want to find out why this didn't get fixed, look to the hardware people themselves. Candle emailed Pasu being the designer of the Rapidus, saying, oh, we've got a problem. What are we going to do about it? And according to what Candle wrote on the forum, he just gets laughed at, or ridiculed, or they don't care, or it's your fault, and blame passing back and forth. That's got nothing to do with me. And it doesn't even got anything to do with Conrad. So on my Rapidus, just to mention a few programs, I wrote the Rapidus menu, 60k of source code, the RotoZoomer, 50k of source code, and I'm maintaining and developing it, among others, the Dracos, the ZX Spectrum emulator, Let's Emu. No single byte of the source code has ever been corrupted, so I consider the machine 100% stable and reliable. Well, good for you. Do you care about the person who spent 160 quid on the board to use it with his Ultimate 1 MB and it doesn't fucking work? Is that emotional enough for you? Do you care about the person who has to put this stuff in the machine and send it back when it doesn't work properly and there's absolutely nothing anybody can do about it? Does that bother you at all? No, it works for me, fine. Fuck you. You must be using it wrong. You must be putting it in wrong. And here we go. Flash Jazz Cat, maybe it is time to send one of your failure machines, to Lotharic or Pasu for inspection. As I understand, it is useless for you in its present state anyways. Well, no, it works fine if I take Rapidus out. It's very useful when I take Rapidus out. It's only when I put Rapidus in that it becomes a useless piece of shit. Maybe it is a simple matter of a mistake or ambiguity in installation instructions are such a problem, so I put it in the machine wrong. The 3 wires that you have to... I put it in the machine wrong. Fuck you! So, fast forward to the present day. So, Kindle finally arrives in the topic. And problems with this machine were found without even installing Ultimate 1 MB here. Thus, further investigation was pointless. From where I stand, Rapidus works only if every part in given machine was touched by God himself and have his blessing. Apparently, he hasn't touched all parts there, since problem would manifest if you would hit the reset button repeatedly while on Rapidus boot menu. All communication with the creator of Rapidus, moderated by Lotharic, was declined or laughed at, so I didn't care to pursue this further. This is pointless. And there you have it. That's why the problems don't get fixed. More of a political or personality issue, I think. So, unfortunately, I have just about had enough of that. So I'm going to withdraw all the stuff I did for Rapidus. So if you want to download it, I very much doubt anybody did actually. I don't think the user base is tremendously large, but if anybody did use the accelerator driver for the hard disk, or I know some people did use the plugin for Rapidus, which all that does is let you turn the core on and off in software. The intention isn't to punish the users at all, but I'm just not going to spend any more time on this, because although I sometimes try and see the funny side of it, it's just a headache. That kind of attitude, well, I'm afraid it just makes me say fuck you, unfortunately. A solid fuck you. If you're going to run around and call me a liar, or that I'm imagining things, or psychoanalyzing me on the forum, saying that I suffer from emotional outbursts, I can give you emotional outbursts if you want them. All the while exhibiting all these behaviours yourself for all to see. As I say, it's more saddening than anything else. It's a shame for such a nice piece of hardware that was really appealing to a lot of people, that it was spoiled by personalities for some reason. It's very strange, but I'm not going to participate in this anymore, and I'm not going to install Rapidus and Ultimate 1 MB in any more computers. Because I can't warranty the thing as working properly, and it really sucks when you've built up a reputation, regardless of the fact that Conrad thinks I've got no credibility, but when you've built up a good reputation for doing good solid work, and I'm not an electronics designer, it's only the other week that I learned how to use a logic analyzer, and that's an ongoing thing, thanks again to Bob Woolley, of course, for sending that device. But to have to send out stuff that has got an inherent problem is not fun, and I don't think it's fair on people when they've paid £160 or whatever it costs now. It may have come down somewhat, but it was the most expensive upgrade for Ataris on the website. And this is no slight on Lotharic. Lotharic invested a lot of money in these boards. The fact that a problem exists is unfortunate for him. So if you want to support Lotharic and buy Rapidus and install it and enjoy it and deal with any problems that may crop up and deal with them yourself, then I say go for it. Absolutely go for it, because Lotharic will have ploughed a lot of money into this, and none of it's his fault. I can't encourage you to support people who design something with a problem, a compatibility issue, which is easy to reproduce, and even when it's been reproduced by people whose credentials are in no doubt whatsoever, they still won't accept it, and they still won't do anything about it. And true to my earlier remark on another topic, never bullshit the user, well, precisely that. If the thing doesn't work, come out and say so. Come out and make a statement and do something about it. Otherwise this cycle just goes on indefinitely. So until that happens, I'm withdrawing all support for Rapidus from the firmware that I've written for Ultimate 1 megabyte. I'm withdrawing the hard disk driver that I wrote, which speeds up the hard disk, until further notice. It's a shame, but I have to do something, because I'm not going to be walked over. It's basically like a slap in the face after having spent quite a considerable amount of time trying to support this device with drivers and videos and all that kind of thing. I mean, the attitude is that it's almost as if the video is an excuse to rant against the device, which is stupid. Obviously, I went into each build hoping against hope that this would be the one that didn't exhibit the issue, and yet in most cases I was left disappointed. So that's the state of play anyway. So yeah, so sorry about that, but hopefully you'll understand that I just don't have the emotional energy to deal with this nonsense anymore, and I can't advocate use of two devices together which can't be warranted and can't be guaranteed to work reasonably. I mean, I know these are 30-40-year-old computers and there are no absolutes, but it seems to me to be an endemic issue, so washing my hands of it now. So well done with that ongoing attitude. You have completely shat in your own nest, or maybe not, maybe you don't care. It's no skin off my back either way. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully you will understand this course of action, and I will see you in the next video. So bye bye for now.
You're fired.